There are literally hundreds of types of cranes, rigging, and equipment in the construction industry, but there are some basic common safety rules that apply to all types of equipment. That's what this program is all about. Basic safety guidelines that apply to cranes and equipment, so you'll be more aware of safety and reduce the potential of an unplanned event, such as a property damage or injury. One of the more important rules is to never operate any type of equipment until you've been trained and authorized by your employer. Make sure you understand all the operating principles, rules, and information on the equipment you're using, and never use any crane that is defective or in unserviceable condition. Whenever there's any doubt about safety of the crane you're operating, stop the operation and notify your supervisor so the crane can be inspected and made safe by proper authorities. Naturally, before starting operations, inspect, test, and maintain the crane in accordance with the crane manufacturer's recommendations. Replace all parts and components showing excessive wear, damage, or other defects that could affect the safe operation of the equipment. Check all wire ropes and rigging components. Keep the machine clean and in good working order. Oil, grease, or mud on floor surfaces can cause serious falls, and dirt in working parts will cause excessive wear and possible failure. To protect yourself during the inspection process or during repairs or maintenance, lower the load to the ground. Check all protective guards and make sure all panels are in place before operating. It's important to check fuel, oil, radiator, and battery water levels. Hydraulics play a major role in crane safety, so double-check all hoses and connections for leaks, bulging, or other damage. Visually inspect all gear cases for leaks or damage. Make sure the gear case has the proper level before operating the equipment. Repair any damaged or unserviceable components. Inspect all controls to make sure they are properly working and work with ease. If control is difficult to operate, check it out. Check the pressure in the tires and check to make sure the nuts are properly torqued on all wheels. Maintain proper inflation at all times, especially when you're working with outriggers. Inspect all the instruments on the instrument panel to make sure they're working properly. Check brake air pressure and the low air pressure warning devices. Inspect the foot brake condition, headlight, clearance lights, turn signals, parking lights, tail, and stop lights. Make sure the windshield wipers and horn are working properly. Clean all windows and mirrors to increase visibility. These are the basics, but if you fail to inspect each component, you're taking a big risk. Inspect the entire machine for loose nuts, bolts, or damaged or worn parts. Be particularly watchful for cracked welds, frayed or damaged ropes, dented or damaged boom cords, or other areas. The clutch and brake linings should be inspected for evidence of wear or grease and oil in the linings. Brakes and brake components are of particular importance, as serious injury to anyone working around the crane is possible if brake parts and adjustments are out of line or not properly maintained. When mounting the equipment, use proper ladders and other procedures. Don't grab wire ropes or lines because a sudden movement of the vehicle could pull your hands into the sheaves. During the operation of the equipment, the operator should watch for malfunctioning of the machine. Listen for unusual noises, loss of power, or bad response to control of the engine. Watch the gauges for abnormal conditions. If you experience a malfunction, shut the equipment down until it's checked and verified safe to operate. When you make your first load, test the winch brakes to make sure they will safely control the load. In extremely poor weather conditions, it may be unsafe to operate the crane. High wind conditions can cause the load to swing out of control or out of the intended swing area. If you can't see because of the weather conditions, it's unsafe to operate the equipment. In extremely cold conditions, the metal parts can be quite brittle, so never subject your crane to shock loads or jerky movements. During refueling operations, make sure all spark-producing devices are turned off. This includes the motor, any heaters, radios, or other such equipment. Bonding and grounding is necessary in most refueling operations, particularly when using flammable liquids. Before starting operations, make sure that all personnel are well clear of the crane. Before backing up, make sure no one is behind the crane. Use another person to help guide you when the visibility is blocked. When getting on or off the equipment, use ladders or proper handholds. Never jump off the equipment. Of course, never allow anyone to ride on the equipment. When you first start your engine, allow the engine to warm up for a few minutes to give the oil a chance to circulate. Don't operate the machine under load until the hydraulic oil has warmed to the minimum operating temperature specified by the manufacturer. To circulate the oil, operate the winches, boom hoist cylinders, boom extension cylinders, and swing mechanism to circulate the oil. Basically, operate all controls so the oil will have time to warm up and lubricate all the pumps and cylinders before the load is applied. This is critical in cold temperatures. When the engine is idled for long periods of time, make sure the idle speed is sufficient to keep the battery charges. Keep the crane engine at or near maximum governed speed during normal operations, especially when lifting a load. This provides maximum fuel economy, efficiency, safety, and power. Before shutting down a heavily worked engine, let it run without any load at part throttle for a few minutes to allow for cooling. When operating near excavations or buildings, make sure exhaust gases or fumes will not accumulate, causing an unhealthful condition. Of course, crane operators must know the location and use of all emergency shutdown switches and procedures. When operating the boom, never use more boom than necessary to get the job done. Always use the shortest boom possible. Electrical lines are always a hazard when working with cranes. Crane operators must constantly be aware of the location of all utility lines, pipelines, sewers, and underground obstructions, and always avoid these areas as much as possible. If necessary, physically mark these locations to prevent estimations or guesses. There are different distances crane operators must stay from power lines depending on your local, regional, or state laws. Be sure to know and follow these guidelines when operating any type of cranes. Generally, you must remain 10 feet from any line voltages up to 125,000 volts. From 125,001 to 250,000 volts, you must remain at least 15 feet away. Over 250,000 volts, you can get no closer to the power line than 25 feet. It's also recommended that another person on the ground serve as an observer to warn the crane operator when these limits may be exceeded. In the unlikely event that you do touch a power line that is energized, stay on the machine and try not to panic. Keep everyone away. If you can, move the crane off the wire. If you have to get off the machine while the crane is still touching the wire, don't step down. Jump off the machine. Jump off the machine and try to land as far away from the machine as possible without falling down. Keep your feet close together. The reason for jumping and keeping your feet together is to reduce electrical shock exposure in the event the ground surface is energized. If your feet are apart, the electrical potential between one foot to the other foot could cause electricity to flow through your body. After you've landed upright, continue to jump with your feet close together until you're far enough away from any potential electrical energy in the ground. Jumping with your feet close together is the safest method of avoiding a serious electrical shock under these circumstances. Always position the crane as close to the load as possible and in such a manner as to minimize the swing. Be sure there is adequate clearance for tail swing, especially if there are other people or vehicles nearby, and make sure the swing lock is disengaged before starting to operate the crane. On cranes equipped with outriggers, always use the outriggers, no matter the size or weight of the load to be lifted. The revolving portion of the superstructure of the crane must be dead level before making any lift. When determining the actual load, it's important to count the weight of all rigging equipment as part of the load. Never rely upon an estimate to figure the load weight. Use your load chart. Just because a crane is stable 1 minute doesn't mean that it will remain stable. There are many factors used in computing safe load limits, so always refer to the load chart and don't take chances. The hydraulic crane operator who waits for signs of tipping to warn of an overload condition will often bend the boom, exceed the pressure limits, or cause severe damage to the machine before any signs of tipping occur. Jerking loads or fast lifting or lowering can also cause machine damage and tipping. Crane capacities are quite complex and are based upon many factors such as the boom length, boom angle, and angle between the boom and pendants, as well as the actual weight of the load. Don't take chances. Don't forget the rigging equipment. They too have rated capacities based upon sling angles, strength of the rigging, weight of the load, and capacity of the tackle. All slings must be properly identified and must be protected from sharp corners or other hazards. Don't make lifts when loose equipment is not properly secured, and secure the unused portion of the sling legs. Never wrap a rope around a hook. Operators on the ground assisting with the lift must stand completely out of the way when the lift is started. Quite often, the load will shift when it is lifted off the ground. Naturally, never allow anyone to ride the load, and keep everyone from underneath a load that's raised. It's also important to keep the area around the crane completely clear of personnel. Know the weight of all loads before attempting to lift anything. Use your load indicator if you're not sure. When operating a truck crane, be sure the carrier transmission is placed in neutral. The rocking or tilting motion of the crane can be transmitted to the locked transmission, causing serious damage. There are many more operating rules, safety precautions, and additional information you need to know as a crane operator, but we can't list them all in this short program. The program has been presented to you to make you more aware of your responsibilities and to take safety very seriously. Crane accidents can occur quite easily, but they can also be prevented by trained, alert, and safety-conscious crane operators. If you take your job seriously, follow your company and crane manufacturer's recommendations, safety will be with you on the job. Taking shortcuts, not following the rules, and operating in an unsafe manner can create the environment for a serious injury. Operating a crane is a serious business. So is the safety of you, your family, and all the other employees on the job. Thank you.